Hello and welcome to this metacognition.org.uk staff CPD video on metacognitive strategies to support student planning. So this is the 6th of the 8 videos and the first on specifically providing strategies for students to use in their practice. Right, before we go any further, if you haven't watched the Introduction to Metacognitive Theory CPD video yet, that is the first in this series of videos, then you need to go and watch it now. The reason for that is the better you understand the theory, the more these strategies will make sense. The more they make sense, the more the reasons why we're using them make sense, the better you will implement them and the more correctly you will implement them. The better they're implemented, the better the success rate they will have. So the aims of this CPD, we're going to look at why planning is so important in developing students' metacognitive abilities and why it's so important for students more generally. And then I'm going to provide you with a repertoire of strategies that you can use to support students in their planning. So why is planning important? It's a fundamental of life. It's not just something we use in education. It's not just something we use to pass an exam. We use it all the time. When am I going to go to the shops? What order am I going to do these tasks in? How long are they going to take? How should I plan and organize my homework, my revision? What am I taking on holiday? When am I going on holiday? Where, etc. We use it every single day, all the time. Typically, the better we plan, the greater the better we are at being organized. The more we reduce our cognitive load, the easier it is to complete stuff, the less stuff we forget, and hence greater and better outcomes. How often do we fail at a task because we're poorly organized? Prepare to fail, fail to prepare is that saying, isn't it? So if we're not preparing well, we're not going to do well. If we prepare well, we're going to do well. That's why planning is so important. If we want students to be academically successful, they must be good at planning. That is just a fundamental. The better they are at planning, this isn't about answering an exam question, it's about structuring their homework, structuring their revision, knowing when to do it, being that sort of better self-regulated learner. If they have got strategies to plan, they will be better. So, like I've just mentioned there, the more strategies you have, the better you will do. And this is because different tasks require different strategies. Now, if you've only got 1, 2, 3 strategies, you're going to be a little bit stuck if none of those fit in with the task or requirement you've got. The more strategies you've got to plan, the more likely you are to have a strategy that suits the task that you have got. So the more strategies we can give students, the more likely they are to be able to plan for a task, the more likely they are to be able to complete it successfully. So 8 strategies in this presentation to provide you with. Again, no one size fits all. It's up to you to decide which ones are going to work for different classes, different subjects, different year groups, etc. 8 strategies that can work. You just need to adapt them to your teaching. The first one is graphic organisers, and a little warning, I'm not going to go into much detail because I've done a separate 1-hour staff CPD video on graphic organisers separately, also under the planning stage, under the planning section of our website, sorry. So I will give you a quick overview of graphic organisers now, but they really are the best strategy that you can learn about and use with students. Reason being, it isn't one strategy, it is 10. The reason it is 10 is because there are 10 different types of graphic organisers. So the different graphic organisers facilitate different types of planning, such as cause and effect, such as compare and contrast, such as similes, such as description. So each different graphic organiser has a different type of thinking behind it, and so it fits a different type of task. They are definitely our best tool in supporting students' planning. And the other great thing is, once learned, they can be used across different subjects typically. They don't vary hugely based upon content. They're very simple to use. Most of them only sort of 2 or 3 are maybe more complex. The rest are fairly straightforward. They're fairly quick to learn. And also, I've got videos on my website for students. So under the student planning section, I already have an introduction to graphic organisers videos, individual videos on all 10 graphic organisers, and quizzes at the end for students to complete. All of the individual videos also incorporate tasks so that students can practice and feedback to you. So if we do want students to be using graphic organisers, you've got a ready-made tool that you can just send the web link to your students for, and they can just get on and learn how to use them without you having actually needing to do anything. Successful use requires CPD, as I've mentioned. I can't cover them quickly in 5 minutes, and you're going to use them successfully. Go to our website and look at this CPD. You might want to check out the other strategies first, but this is the one I would urge you to take a look at. The next one is planning documents. So this is turning our metacognitive processes into planning documents. So taking our knowledge of task, knowledge of self, and knowledge of strategies template, turning it into this table here, and just getting students to fill it out. Fill out what they know about the task, fill out what they know about their self, and fill out what they know about their strategies. This is really, really explicit metacognition because they're literally looking at the different processes within the metacognitive theory. Get them to fill in these different stages, and this will provide a really solid template for a student to start completing the task or to lead on a discussion or for you to question them on. So it's a brilliant way to support students' planning. The next one is problem-solving grids, and this is something that I've developed over at metacognition.org.uk based upon a huge range of academic research which has shown huge success rates. So problem solving is hugely difficult for students. We know this. Whenever they're trying to complete non-authentic tasks or non-authentic questions, i.e. application, real life application, exam questions, they struggle. It might seem really obvious to us, but still students just don't know where to go. They require some sort of scaffold. The normal processes that they use cannot just be translated to these tasks, so they require something else to help them. Now, these grids walk students through the 4 different areas they need to go through to be successful problem solvers. And it links back to these 4 key questions I've mentioned before: task comprehension, task connection, strategies, and evaluation. These 4 areas won't guarantee success, but they will push students towards far higher levels of success. Now, I've produced masses of templates of these, all available for free on the website, and each of the templates comes in high scaffolding for students who are at the beginning of their problem-solving journeys, or possibly those who continue to struggle, medium for those who are beginning to be weaned off or already quite good at problem-solving, and then those with no scaffolding. So once they become really familiar with these templates, or when they're really doing well, they don't need any scaffolding on these templates. It is just a blank template for them to fill in so that they can complete a task. I'm now going to go through some of the examples so that I can explain them in more detail for you. So this is one of them. So this is kind of in a flow map type of manner. It's sequencing. So you can see here that you'd maybe print the exam question or the problem solving topic task on a different page, and students would then fill in this grid. And what I do is I print these off and I get them laminated and give them whiteboard pens so they can quickly rip it off and they can use them over and over and over again for different tasks. Saves you printing off 30 of these for every lesson you do every single day. And all students do is they just fill in from the task they've been given the different stages. So comprehension, what do I think the task is about? Connection, have I done something similar before? Strategies, what are the different ways I can solve it? And reflection, once you've completed the task, oops, the strategy didn't work, or what a strategy, it was quick, it was effective. You can also put it into a Freya model as well. So this is a different type of graphic organizer. It does exactly the same thing, but in this model, you can insert the question in the center. You can see that this is one with high levels of scaffolding. So in each of the 4 different sections, I've given sort of trigger questions so that students can answer them. So if students don't know what comprehension means or what connection means, then they can just literally answer those questions. So by working their way through those questions and answering those questions, they give themselves a hugely beneficial planning template to then go and attempt that question. Again, here, this is back to the flow model example: comprehension, connection, strategies, and reflection. And again, this is one of those high scaffold examples. I've popped in some of the key questions here for each of the different stages. Students can work through this, answer those questions, and it provides them with a really detailed planning document. Here is the Freya model again as a last example. This is a medium scaffold, so maybe students know most of the questions, but I've just left one in there just to sort of trigger them, just to give them a little bit of a reminder about what the 4 different parts mean. As mentioned, these are all available on the website. The link is on the side. You will find that all of these are available high, medium, low scaffolding in both PDF and Word format. Word format if you want to edit them, and PDF format if you just want to print them off. But like I say, I just print these off, get them laminated, and you're sorted then. You don't need to worry about printing them out multiple times. Strategy 4 is exam question analysis. So the idea here is to model that exam question to facilitate that class discussion. By identifying what the best answers include, the strategies that they use, their structure and the content that they include, students are beginning to identify the key criteria of high quality answers. Students can then use this information to inform their planning. So, for example, if students go through and evaluate, possibly with you modelling or in a discussion, the analysis of the causes of World War I exam question, they can draw out the really good bits of this and use that to inform their planning for a second question on the causes of World War II. Keyword quizzing, something that I think is incredibly important and often overlooked. I would recommend producing a list of keywords and phrases, and this is particularly crucial in Year 7 when they're making a huge jump from primary to secondary, where the language of school hugely changes, especially in terms of subject content. Produce these keywords, produce these phrases that you would expect students to know. So maybe exam command words for your GCSE students, key event names. Take them from your knowledge organisers. If you've got knowledge organisers, this is a copy and paste job, or simply pointing it out to the students. I would then do one of two things. Either quiz students on these words, so possibly you would do it once a week. Either students would need to provide definitions, or given the definition, they need to provide you with the keyword. Alternatively, get students to produce flashcards or produce flashcards yourselves and photocopy them, and then get students to quiz each other on these keywords and key phrases, the definitions, and given the definition, what is the keyword? The reason for this is students are never going to be able to comprehend questions without this type of subject knowledge, without these keywords. You're not going to give a Year 2 student a PhD thesis and say, read this. Their language level isn't going to be good enough. And unless we are explicit in teaching these keywords and quizzing them in low stakes testing, students are not going to pick it up. So in this way, we're supporting students' planning by providing them with the knowledge they need to actually access the work. Strategy 6 is strategy evaluation. So in this one, it's a two birds in one stone. So once you've got students to evaluate some work, make students take this evaluation to inform planning of a similar connected task. So instead of just students evaluating work and leaving it there and moving on, make students use that evaluation to inform planning for a connected task. So, giving you an example here, for example, in Lesson 1, students plan and complete a task. In Lesson 2, they then evaluate that task and use that evaluation to plan to complete that task again. And then in Lesson 3, they'd complete that task again. Two birds, one stone. And it's showing students that evaluation must lead back to future planning. If students evaluate, it's a little bit like with feedback. If we provide feedback and students don't act on it, it's fairly pointless. Feedback needs to be acted on. Evaluation needs to be acted on. By ensuring that students utilize it instantly in future planning, they are cementing their strengths and they are addressing their weaknesses. You don't want to leave their weaknesses unaddressed. The sooner they can address them, the sooner they can correct them. So if you've not watched it yet, you will need to make sure that you're watching the Metacognitive Strategies CPD on evaluation so that you can ensure that you are leading successful student evaluation in your classroom. Don't jump straight to this strategy without having had a look at that. Strategy 7 is the use of knowledge organisers and other scaffolds. This is something I'm quite big on. We need to model and train students to use these scaffolds we give them. There is little point giving students a scaffold without explaining how to use it and why we're using it and how it actually helps. Very often we provide a scaffold, presume that a student will know how to use it, and presume that they know why they're using it. But it's very, very good practice to explain to a student, we're using this scaffold because it will help us, and just really going through those justifications. So What I would recommend here in terms of planning is provide students with different scaffolds, a dictionary, a thesaurus, a knowledge organiser, a textbook, train them on how to use it, and then get students to plan without that scaffold, and then get students to plan with that scaffold and evaluate for difference. So for example, a student might be stuck with 10 bullet points before using the scaffold. Their scaffold might have been the knowledge organiser, they've utilised the knowledge organiser, and now they've got 15 bullet points. So it's a two-step process. Model and train the students on using these scaffolds, and then provide them with an opportunity to use the scaffolds and understand how beneficial they are. Now, just as a point of remembering, really, scaffolds do need to be withdrawn. We don't want to be leaving them there permanently. A scaffold is something that is to be removed. We don't have homes and houses and buildings with scaffold permanently on it. It gets taken off when the work is done. It's the same here with students. We need to be removing these scaffolds over time. But by having these scaffolds in place and showing students the resources that they can use, this supports them in being independent learners. If students know that they can benefit from using a knowledge organiser, they will use it. If students know that they can benefit from an online thesaurus, they will use it at home to improve their work. This supports independent students who are more able to complete their tasks and to revise effectively. Strategy 8 is limited questions. So often students ask questions and questions and questions, and they're repetitive and they're the same and they're not very precise and they're not very helpful. Students aren't brave enough to get on with the task without asking questions. And so the suggestion here to support students for their own sake to help with their planning is to reduce their capacity to ask poor questions. It's not to reduce their capacity to ask high quality, insightful questions. It's to remove the waffle, basically. So, a few options here. Refusing to answer poor questions, or only allowing answers to high quality questions, so only answering students if they provide a well thought out and in-depth question. Secondly, you can limit the amount of questions that students have. So for example, you could say, right, you have got 3 opportunities for a question in this lesson. After that, you won't be able to use or ask any more questions. This really focuses students' minds and makes them focus in on what they really need to know. You could almost have this as sort of like a Hawkeye or a DRS referral system. They lose their question if it's a poor question, but they get to keep their question if it's a high quality question. Or maybe they even get to gain a question if it's a really high order or high level of thinking question. The last one is developing a strategy of processes that students go through before asking you a question. So one suggestion is the brain, book, buddy question order. So the idea here is that firstly, students actually have to think. How often do we give students a task and we know that they haven't looked at it and they're already asking a question? So firstly, students actually need to think. Without thinking, they're not going to learn. Secondly, if they're still stuck, have a look in their book. How many times have we already written down an example of a definition or a process that students just haven't used? If they're still stuck, speak to the person next to them. Obviously, this can be hard to monitor, and you might have 15 pairs of students all turning around talking about Love Island. But obviously, this fits in with whatever class you have, and you will have to make it appropriate to that group. Obviously, after they've asked their buddy, if they're still stuck, then they can come and ask you the question. Obviously, the idea of all of these is to support independent learners, and this helps them to improve their planning through asking appropriate questions and identifying appropriate supports. Also helps to wean them off you and frees you up to get on with other stuff, or help the students who really do require support. So thank you very much for watching the CPD. I've gone through all of those strategies available to you now. I hope that some of them were helpful. I hope that some of them can be used within your practice and will suit your different classes and students. Do remember that we do have more CPD and resources online at metacognition.org.uk underneath the teacher section, and that resources and CPD are being added all the time. So do check back to see what's being added onto the website, and do follow our Twitter at MetacognitionU to make sure that you're keeping up to date with all of the latest stuff that we are doing. Everything on the website is free as well, and I always remember this. If you're able to, as a school or as an individual, just donate a few pennies or pounds towards the website, it would be hugely appreciated. It will go towards supporting the running costs of the website and just ensuring that it can remain free. The last thing that I want to do is to put a paywall up to make people pay for these resources. The whole idea is to keep them free so that most people as possible can benefit and the most schools as possible can benefit. This is also why I want you to spread them widely if you can. If you've enjoyed this CPD and think it will be beneficial, please pass it on. Please pass it on to your T&L leads, your SLT leads, your faculty, so that they can go and do it and they can pass it on. Any teacher friends, anybody you work with, please do pass it on so that more and more people can benefit from these strategies. Twitter handle is there for you to follow. And the next video for you to go and watch is Metacognitive Strategies for Monitoring. That is the next stage of the process. But a second video for you to watch is also on graphic organisers. As mentioned, that was the first strategy in this video. It is hugely important and the one that I really believe can impact practice quickly across all students and a range of schools. So please go and check out that graphic organiser CPD under the planning section on the teacher heading on our website. Thank you very much for watching, and please enjoy the rest of our videos.